Okay, all the time we're in Shir Gimel, Hilchot Birkat HaGomel. So every time people are always asking, do I say HaGomel? Do I say HaGomel? Do I say HaGomel? Well, hopefully today you're going to come out with a clear mind according to Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. When do we say the Bracha of HaGomel? So first thing he brings down on page 117, he brings the Bracha of the Gomel. It seems to be bringing the Ashkenazic version of the bracha. I mean, it's not really much of a difference. If you take a look in our Sidurim, so here he said, what do we say? Tov, right? And here he writes Tov. There are some versions that say Tov. We usually pronounce Kol Tov. It's similar translation. Then he says the answer that they say, Tov, our answer is a little different. We say Ha'el. It's the same understanding of what we're saying, a little bit of verbiage different. Also, Sfaradim, we always love to add in extra parts. So we start off with Yodel Hashem Chazda, we have these little psukim that we say before Birkat HaGomel. That's our standard of doing things. We always add some psukim before. We say more words after. But the bracha itself is pretty much the same. HaGomel, L'chayavim tovot, shegemalani kol tov. Okay, that's the bracha. Now, who says this bracha of HaGomel? So we're going to start on page 118. We're going to see a Gemara Masechta Berachot. The Gemara Masechta Berachot says, Amar Yehuda Marav, Arba'ah. There are 4 people. Tzichin Lohodot. 4 people have to say Birkat HaGomel. Who are these 4 people? Yordei Hayam. The people who go through the sea. Holchei Midbarot. Who travel through a desert. If someone was sick and got healed. Someone was locked up in jail and came out. What is he blessed? Abai Amar, and he has to say it in front of 10 people. Because it says you're going to bless Hashem in a group of the nation, a congregation of people. Okay, that's the Gemara. So this is the Gemara. The Gemara says 4 people have to say Birkat HaGomel. So let's get the 4 people straight in our head. Those who go through the sea, those who go through the desert, those who got sick and got healed, and those who were incarcerated in jail and came out. Those are the 4. The first question that the Bet Yosef deals with is when the Gemara says, when Arba, 4, does the Gemara mean 4 only? That means only these cases? Or does the Gemara also mean those that are similar to this 4? That's the initial concept, and that's, by the way, going to be the mahloket of Sephardim and Ashkenazim. When it says Arba'ah, 4 people have to say Gomel. Is it Arba'ah actually Dafka Arba'ah? Has to be these 4, or Lav Dafka, or not these 4? So here on the Bet Yosef, he brings first from the Abu Draham. The Abu Draham writes, Yesh Omrim, Sh'arba Bilvad Tzrichim Lohodot. Only these 4, the Gemara says. The sea travelers, the desert travelers, the guys who got sick and got up, and the guy who was in jail. Just these 4. Aval Ahirim, but other people who went through some miraculous salvation, Shivaruchu Ave Bracha Levatala. The Bracha Levatala. The Gemara said this Bracha is only for these 4. But then he brings the Rivash. And the Rivash says, what are you talking about? He says, if someone got saved, right? What's the whole reason you're saying it in the desert? Person walks through the desert. Why are you making bracha Gomel after you go through the desert? Because it was dangerous and you got saved. So anytime you got saved, you make Birkat HaGomel. This is the other side of the machloket. So This is the Abu Draham and the Rivash. Okay? The Abu Draham says, Gemara said 4 people, it's 4 people. Rivash said the Gemara didn't mean just 4 people. Rather, people who are like these 4 people. Okay. Now we're going to see Shulchan Aruch. Page 120. Shulchan Aruch says, but therefore I have to say, Gomel, your dehayam, kishalu mimena. Those who go into the water, when they come out, they make bracha. When they come to a settled place. Someone was sick and got healed. Someone was inside jail and comes out. Now, says the Shulchan Aruch, these 4 labdavka are not exclusive. And this is the same halacha when nes happened for someone. A wall fell on him. Or midrisat sure, but he got there was something an ox chasing him and he got saved. Or there was a lion that wanted to kill him. So Shulchan Aruch says, seems to say like the Rivash at this point, that what? Any type of miracle, not just these 4. But then he writes, just these first 4 that the Gemara mentioned. Therefore, every other case that miracle can happen, you make the bracha without the Shem Malchut, without Hashem's name. So that's a Shulchan Aruch in the end. Shulchan Aruch started saying you have 4. Then he says it's not just the 4, every miracle. Then he said, no, you should be careful. Only those 4. Therefore, in the other cases, you say it without Shem Umalchut. Okay? Now, the Mishnah Berurah Ashkenazim, he says that the Amino Kisvara Rishona, B'chem Istav. So the Shulchan Aruch's first idea that anyone who got a miracle said Birkat HaGomel, that's the minhag, and that's what makes more sense. So it seems to be from the Mishnah Berurah Ashkenazim, they got saved from a wall, fell on them, or anything, any sort of miracle. They make Birkat HaGomel. So too, Rav Wozner over here in the Sha'al Shuva Shevet HaLevi, he deals about soldiers returning from a mission or from service. Okay, so you had these Jewish soldiers going out to war. They're not on the list of the 4, right? Unless they're sailors and they're in the Navy, then you do have your Hayom, right? Or if their mission is going into the desert, okay? But it's time they're in the city or whatever it is. Do they make it or not? So the Sha'al Shuva Shevet HaLevi, he writes, it's a place of danger. Soldiers are going to dangerous places. So, therefore, they should make a bracha. Again, Ashkenazic posek, saying some sort of miracle happens, you make Birkat HaGomel. The other issue is about cars. They're going right now according to Ashkenazic poskim. What about car accidents? All right, this person got into a car accident and he survived. Right, everyone survived. Just the car got bad damage. Make it Birkat HaGomel or not. So here, the Ashkenazim make a little bit more of a thing. He says over here nowadays, this is from Moshe Feinstein, Yigus Moshe. Even though now in our country we travel in cars, it's not that dangerous, and you don't make a bracha unless where the cars collided and they were injured, not injured. He says otherwise, most car accidents, the most minor fender benders, whatever it is, even according to Ashkenazim, they're not going to make Birkat HaGomel. Okay. Huh? He's saying it has to be that it had to be a case that you could have got injured. Okay, so wait. Now we're just dealing with Ashkenazic poskim. So far, according to Ashkenazic poskim, you got saved from a miracle, meaning, and the cops came and said, "Oh, you're still alive? You still got your limbs on? Ah, that's a miracle." So then you make it Birkat HaGomel. Now, what about Sfaradim? So I'm going to read from you. You can go through this one over here, source 8 on page 122. But I found it in the English edition. I thought it said it much clearer. So I'm going to read it from over here. He says over here, some poskim rule that the blessing of HaGomel is meant not only for the four categories listed in the Gemara, but anyone who experiences a mortal danger and then saved from it, whether by natural means or through a miracle. This would include someone who's attacked by a wild bull, escaped being gored or trampled, someone was attacked by a lion, poisonous snake, who was attacked by armed robbers, or someone was involved in a traffic accident where the vehicle was totally destroyed, like your Lashon, a total destruction, and he escaped unscathed. After any of these instances, one must recite the blessing of HaGomel. This is what some poskim say. Others rule that this blessing is limited to the four cases listed by the Chachamim. Now, he writes, in practice, what are we Sfaradim supposed to do? Someone who experiences one of the above dangers should recite the blessing of HaGomel without HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, without Shem Malchut. So it comes out for Sfaradim that what? Your car was totally destroyed and you walked out safe. You do not make Birkat HaGomel unless you already traveled 72 minutes into city. Remember, because then you can make Birkat HaGomel. 72-minute intercity travel. It's like going through a desert. It's a dangerous place. You make Birkat HaGomel. But in an accident, your car is destroyed, and you didn't travel 72 minutes, and you walked out okay? No, HaGomel. But the Shem Malchut. Make it go without Shem Malchut. What do you mean?
Oh, HaGomel.
Yeah, without Hashem's name.
And you're going to answer me?
Make it say. There's no interest. No problem with that.
Do that next time.
For what?
What you just said.
The guy got an accident?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make it. It says.
Regardless, I'm saying that.
Okay, so this is now the halacha. We have it clear. Ashkenazim, any type of miracle that they were saved from, they're making Birkat HaGomel. Sfaradim, no. They have to go what the Gemara said. With these four. One who went into water, into Hayam, goes into the sea. One who goes into the desert. One who got sick and got healed. And one who went into jail and came out. Okay. So far, so good. Oh, so airplane, where is airplane in? So it's actually, we're going to see. What is an airplane compared to? So some want to say it's like a boat. It's a boat in the air. Right? But we're going to see that Chacham Avadi doesn't seem to be saying that. He says that a plane is more like intercity travel, like going into the desert, an intercity travel. And he's going to say you need 72 minutes of, whether it's actual flight time or going to the airport and out of the airport might also be counted. Some machloka what he meant. But we say don't make the bracha unless you're on a 72-minute flight. Okay, it's gonna make a difference. But we're going to see it going on a boat. It doesn't need to be 72 minutes. Once you're on a boat and you came off a boat, even a short trip, you're ready to make HaGomel. Everything's going to come in time. Okay, let's go through all the things. Okay, let's start off. So when you came back from the cruise, you made HaGomel. Okay, very good.
The ferry.
If you go on the ferry, short trip, you should make HaGomel. Okay. We're going to see shortly. Okay, let's see. If I haven't learned it right, then that's what it should be. All right, let's start. He says, crossing the desert, intercity travel. Remember, intercity travel, when we're traveling between one city and another, and you have 72 minutes of travel time, we make Birkat HaGomel because it's considered as going into the Midbar, going into a dangerous area. Because intercity travel means between one city and the next city, it's a very dangerous road. People, there's no, places to stop or whatever like that. There's bandits out there. There's lions out there. So a person makes HaGomel. Even though today there's no lions out there, most of the roads, and there's usually not bandits out there either. However, still 72 minutes traveling into intercity, you make HaGomel. Okay, he writes over here, and he brings from the Rosh. Rosh says that the custom of Germany and France is not to make Birkat HaGomel when traveling from one city to the other. Right? So that's what Ashkenazim do not make Birkat HaGomel when they do intercity travel. Right? They're not making HaGomel. Because he says, walking in the desert, there's wild animals and bandits. But on the roads, there aren't. Therefore, don't make the bracha of HaGomel. The Bet Yosef, he writes that the Rambam, when describing Birkat HaGomel, he doesn't just write those who go into the desert. The Rambam writes those who traveled on roads. So seemingly the Rambam understands intercity travel as being going through the desert. So says the Shulchan Aruch, source 120, page 124, source 11. So in Germany and in France, they don't say a bracha HaGomel when they go from city to city. Only if they actually go into the desert. Because there you have wild animals and you have bandits there. Okay? Of Sfarad, but by the Sephardic Jews, no, they do have, I mean, have to make Birkat HaGomel for intercity travel. All the roads that have a sakana, all considered like midbar, they're all sakana. However, but if it's less than 72-minute travel, then you don't make a bracha. But if you know it's a very dangerous place, right? I mean, you have to give an example. Mushal, what's a very dangerous place? Okay. Then even less than a parsa, you also have to make a bracha. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Okay, so Shulchan Aruch makes it clear that intercity travel is a machloket Ashkenazim Sfaradim. We say going 72 minutes on the road between two cities, right? So you have to understand what a city means. So in New York City, that includes Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island, Manhattan, Queens. So you could be traveling throughout the 5 boroughs. You're never going to make the bracha of HaGomel because you didn't do 72 minutes of intercity travel. 72 minutes intercity travel you can hit. For example, if you're going from here to, let's say, to Lakewood, right? So you're going, that's a far. Muncie, you're going far travel, 72 minutes of intercity travel, then you make the goal. If you're traveling both ways in one day, so even if, say you did 35 minutes one way and then another 37 minutes the other way, and you hit 72, you just make the bracha HaGomel. It counts per the day. All right, it doesn't have to be one leg. It doesn't have to be the whole trip. To be legs of the trip, parts of the trip. Okay, so now to take a look here in outside of the Tzurba for a moment. We're looking in the Yalkut Yosef English edition. You have a copy over here in the back. Also, if you want to take that out, travelers. He writes over here on page 401. The practice of Sephardic Jews is to recite the blessing of HaGomel after traveling from one city to another, even within the country. Our sages declare that traveling through uninhabited areas always has an element of danger. Therefore, anyone who travels by automobile from one city to another must recite the blessing of HaGomel afterward if the trip takes over 72 minutes. Okay. If someone travels through an area that's particularly dangerous, he cites Birkat HaGomel after even the trip took less than 72 minutes. Okay, so for example, in Eretz Yisrael, certain roads that lead to, might lead to Palestinian villages or something like that, they throw all sorts of cocktails and all sorts of guns down the road. That's considered a dangerous road. And therefore, if a person just travels on that road alone, he'll be able to say HaGomel afterwards. New York City to Muncie, New York City to Lakewood. New York City includes the 5 boroughs. So within the 5 boroughs, you don't make HaGomel. It's one city. One city. Everything's too close. It's not dangerous. There's no real. If you jump on from here to the Belt Parkway and you end up in Brooklyn.
If I say New York City, isn't that
no, New York City legally means the 5 boroughs.
What
When
about
we say
Long
the
Island?
city, we mean Manhattan. But it doesn't. New York City is the 5 boroughs. It's one city. State is New York State. It's huge. And there you have city to city. Yeah, you have city to city. Okay.
What about Long Island?
So Long Island is a separate city. However, Long Island is too close to New York City, especially if you're traveling.
Some places are 72 minutes away, exit 70 something or whatever.
When it means intercity travel, it means usually you're going on roads that are uninhabited, like you're going on a highway or something.
Yeah. 495. Go up to 60. In another 10 minutes to another place. It's like going to Jersey.
I don't know. The status of Long Island, I would question, just because Long Island in a lot of people's minds is another borough of New York City. it is treated by many as another borough of New York City. All right. Right. And the truth is, Long Island, actually, that is true too. Long Island Brooklyn is on Long Island. Queens is on Long Island. We're all actually on Long Island. In fact, before this part of became part of Queens, they used to address this as Long Island because this is on Long Island. Brooklyn is also on the island called Long Island. So that is true. I would not, I would ask, but I would not say a bracha on traveling to Long Island. It's too close. It's considered part of the same place. Yeah. I would say only like we said before, going to Lakewood, go to Muncie, going really outside of New York City and traveling from there. Okay, now the other halacha here he brings, what about those who are professional drivers? And they drive every day from city to city, several times a day, several times a week. How often should they be making Birkat HaGomel? What? Once a week. So he says over here, once a week. Okay, and he says you can see it in source 13. Someone who travels over and often, he should do the bracha once a week. Okay, once a week, he can make the bracha of HaGomel. He said he brings over here on the top of 120, page 125. He brings from Mordechai Eliezer bracha that he would say, no, not even once a week, once a month. Okay, although we do it once a week. We brought down the others hold once a month. Okay, what about crossing the sea? So now we have about crossing the intercity travel, going through deserts. What about crossing the sea? Okay, so going into the sea. So you can go through the Piskei Teshuvot, but what I'm going to do, you take the Yaakov Yosef English edition, page 397. And he goes through a couple of halachot and I think makes everything clear. Halacha 30. Anyone who travels in a vessel on the sea or a lake or a right river must recite the blessing of HaGomel upon reaching port and arriving at an inhabited place, even if the trip was smooth and uneventful. So going on a vessel, you make Birkat HaGomel. Okay? Then I said to look at halacha 31. We're gonna deal with that. We're gonna deal with that later. It's gonna have to be 10. We're gonna deal with that. He writes over here, halacha 31, that you don't make the bracha of HaGomel on a boat until you get to your final destination. Even if the ship encountered a fierce storm on the first leg of his trip and the travelers survived due to a miracle, they do not recite Birkat HaGomel until they get to their final destination. So you're on the boat, right? You went round trip. You don't make the bracha HaGomel until you come back.
Final destination is
Your final destination is back. You're on a round trip, right?
Destination is
I would assume you make only bracha when you get back, because that's your final destination. Yeah. Or you're saying when I get to that island, but you're staying on the cruise.
Oh.
Where do you sleep?
Don't forget, every time you start Gomel, bring a korban. You want to bring another korban?
Yeah. So you're sleeping on the boat. It means you're on the boat. You're not. You didn't disembark. You didn't come off. But it means coming off. So if I travel on boat from country to country and I go to another country, that's my final destination. Fine. But I'm going on a cruise and I'm going for a week or whatever it is, and I'm coming back. My destination is back home. I make it because of home when I get back, not on the legs of the trip. Okay. Furthermore, he says if someone goes out over the open sea in a pleasure craft, such as a yacht, right, or goes on a cruise liner, he still makes a Birkat HaGomel when he comes back. So short cruises. If someone travels by ship from Antwerp, Belgium to London, or from London to Antwerp, I can't imagine that takes too long. That's a ferry, right? He must recite the blessing of HaGomel. So based on that, I will say the same thing. If you take this ferry from Beach Channel Drive and you take it to the city, or you take it from here to Brooklyn, or wherever it is, that's it. You make Birkat HaGomel already. You're on a boat. This is what he says. How often do we go on the ferry already? People, yeah. Okay, what about professional sailors and Navy officers who come ashore to spend a few days at home? They must recite the blessing of HaGomel, even though their plans are to go back at the sea after a short vacation. Likewise, people who work daily on fishing boats and travel far from shore in pursuit of fish must recite the blessing of HaGomel each Shabbat. So fishermen should make a bracha once a week, even though they're going out and they're not going out too far. They take the boat a little bit and they come back. Once you're on a boat, HaGomel. That's it. Short trip on the boat, HaGomel. Okay.
Different. I understood that. It's for a trip at home most of the time on the boat.
What do you
That
mean?
halacha that you just read.
Yeah.
Let's do the opposite.
And travel far from shore in pursuit of fish must recite the blessing of HaGomel each week. Who comes to spend a few days at home must recite the blessing of HaGomel, even though they're planning to go back at the sea after the short vacation. No, he's saying the same thing. If you're on a boat, short boat trip, it's HaGomel. Zehu. Once you're on a boat, you make. So here he writes in the Halacha Bura. So from here, from the Yakut Yosef, nowhere does he talk about a time that you need to be on the boat in order to say a Gomer. Right now, like intercity travel, you need 72 minutes. Doesn't say that over here at all when it comes to going on a boat.
When the boat is saying sakana, dangerous, right? Water. If I want swimming without a boat for 10, 15 minutes, I want to cross the small island.
10 times.
Okay, about swimming. He writes that anytime that someone goes swimming, he's considered to be a traveler in the sea. And he must recite the blessing of HaGomel when he returns home. This applies even in the calm lakes such as Lake Kinneret. And if a lifeguard is posted at the beach. There have been a number of tragic accidents where people went swimming at these beaches. I don't think he's talking about a swimming pool, but he seems to be talking, not a pool. You're going to a beach, swimming at a beach, swimming at a lake. He seems... Someone who goes into the water to swim, he's considered a sea traveler.
If you go a few feet, you don't have to say go. If you go from this corner,
and he
to
says
the
I
other
go
corner,
out. I don't know what you want me to make out of it.
Every time I go to take a shower.
No, where are you taking the shower? In the ocean?
Yeah.
Okay, so they gotta go out. Okay,
if you go to swim from here to here, come back. If you go from this corner to that corner, it's a different story.
Okay.
You cross like swimming.
Here. Okay, about traveling on the boat. He says the blessing of HaGomel, however, applies to anyone who goes out into the sea. And this is true even if he sails less than a parsa. He is not to be considered a traveler to become obligated to recite the blessing of HaGomel. So it seems to be that looking through Maran Tzion's writings, they're saying that going on a boat, he separated going on a boat from traveling on the roads. However, Halacha Berurah, his son, David Yosef, writes, no, a boat also, in order to say the Bracha HaGomel, you'd have to be on it 72 minutes. Okay? So he wants to make that same qualification of that parsa in order to make the Bracha HaGomel. But that's not what it's saying in the Yalkut Yosef. He says short trip, Goma. So someone goes swimming. He's considered to be a traveling scene. He must recite the blessing of HaGomel when he returns home.
Who goes ocean? Travel. I mean, you don't
Okay, so that's what we come out over here. Fine. Now, what about air travel? All right, going on a plane. Okay, so going on a plane, page 126. So he brings over here from the Igrot Moshe. He writes over here that it's clear to me that one must recite the Bracha of HaGomel. And he wants to compare the airplane to a ship, right? A ship goes dangerous place in the water, and the airplane goes into a dangerous place in the sky, right? So make Birkat HaGomel. Tzitz Eliezer wants to say, it seems clear that when someone travels a long distance by flying an airplane, he should recite Birkat HaGomel. When flying from one city to another in the same country, it would be that one should not recite HaGomel in such a case. So you already have the Tzitz Eliezer that says maybe traveling close by, right? So when I was in Eretz Yisrael, I wanted to go to the vacation resort in Eilat, right? So to the vacation city over there. So there's a flight. It's a short flight. 40 minutes? Yeah. Very short flight, right? So such a flight, Tzitz Eliezer says you would not say HaGomel on that. He brings over here from from Rav Soloveitchik, Rosh Hashiva of YU, where he writes that his practice was not to say Birkat HaGomel on air travel. He's saying it's so safe that it's safer than traveling on the roads. So there's no need to say Birkat HaGomel. So there is such an opinion. However, Piskei Teshuvot brings, most people make Birkat HaGomel when they travel on the plane. What about the Yalkut Yosef? What does he say about traveling on a plane? So we had different opinions here. Egot Moshe says, say it. It's like going on a boat, right? You had the Tzitz Eliezer that made a difference between short flights and long flights. You had Rav Soloveitchik from YU who said that no bracha on going on planes. It's so safe. You have no issue. Piskei Teshuvot says everyone does it, make the bracha. What does the Yalkut Yosef have to say about on a plane? So if you take a look in the third brachot number 3 on page 404, air travel. So he says over here, if someone flies in a plane or a helicopter for at least 72 minutes, so he brings in his 72 minutes again, this parcel that you need, the 72 minutes time, he must afterwards recite the Birkat HaGomel with Hashem's name. And you see, he's comparing it to what? He says over here, it's considered traveling through the wilderness. And this is the custom. Because according to Chamuvadia, what we wanted to say, he said on a boat, you don't need any time. Right away, Birkat HaGomel. Going through the wilderness, you need time. So he says airplanes are going through a wilderness. And therefore you need the time. Over here in the footnote, he wants to bring in that they once asked Chamuvadia about a short flight, if they have to say Tfilat HaDerech. Right? It's Tfilat HaDerech and Birkat HaGomel when it comes to travel, they overlap, or do they? Right? And Chamuvadia said, yeah, make the bracha with Shem Hashem, Tfilat HaDerech. They said, how? So they wanted to understand that he was taking in the time to the airport from the airport. So the question is, do you also do that for Birkat HaGomel? Right? Do we saying that overlap exists there as well? At the end over here, his conclusion is not to do that. And he says, if it's a flight 72 minutes, then we should say Birkat HaGomel. If it's less than 72 minutes, we have what to rely on not to say B'Shem Malchut. Okay. Fine. Now, what was another one? Imprisonment. You come out of jail, come out of prison, you have to make Birkat HaGomel. Why were you in prison? Or does it make a difference which prison it is, right? In the olden days, being in a prison was you were in some dungeon somewhere, rats were running around, they didn't give you any food, you're very likely to die very, very soon, right? And then you got out, so maybe we got to go there, right? Today, maybe the prisons, at least in first world countries, right, in the West, they're very humane. In fact, some people on purpose try to get into prison so they can have 3 hots on a cot, right? So there's and you get the college education, right? You can get all these good things within prison. So maybe, do you really say HaGomel when you come out for that? Or maybe also there's a difference. Maybe it's only for capital punishment, right? Magen Avram wants to say over here. So take a look at page 130 of source number 19. Magen Avram wants to say, only because if it's a capital punishment case and he went into jail because of that, they're trying to figure out to kill him, not. And now he got out, then you make the Birkat HaGomel. Otherwise, we don't. So in short, let's take a look at the Yalkut Yosef and our Yalkut Yosef over here on page 395, and we'll explain the way Chamuvadia looks at this. Yalkut Yosef brings it down. Capital punishment means punishment that you can lose your life. Death penalty. Okay. So he writes over here in the Yalkut Yosef, page 395 in the English edition, Brachot number 3, Simon 219. He writes as follows: if someone is in prison, whether on capital charges or for some monetary infraction, he must recite Birkat HaGomel when he is released. So we do not go like this, Magen Avraham. Okay? We do not go like Magen Avraham. We say a bracha if you come out of jail for any reason. The person could have avoided being imprisoned by paying the amount imposed on him, but he refused, right? In the hope of forcing the authorities to come to some sort of compromise, he still must recite this blessing when he is finally released. Take a look at Halacha 24. Someone was sentenced to perform community service, and he must appear every day at the police headquarters, then he does not recite the Birkat HaGomel. He never was in jail. He's just doing community service. Right? So it has to be actually in a prison. Okay, and then he brings another one. Someone is arrested and held by the police for interrogations. Okay? They're using the Patriot Act. They threw you into interrogation cell. They're keeping you there for like a very long time. And then he's released. He says over here, HaGomel. He does not say HaGomel. Okay. What would be the difference? I guess he was never jailed. He was never really in prison. They were just questioning him. So maybe that's why he doesn't make a gomel there. Okay, there was not in real any danger at those 2 days or whatever it is. Right, so he makes that difference. Okay, you can go through it, released on bail, solitary confinement. It turns out to be if you're house arrest, you don't make a gomel either. You have to really be in a danger. Now, what's the danger of being even in American prisons, the 3 hot in the cot? What's still the danger of being in why? No. Right. So basically, it's not just it's the environment. It's your fellow violent criminals who are there. Right? Who's running the prisons? The security guards or the gangs that are in prison, right? So the gangs that are in prison, the prisoners that are in prison are a very thing. So maybe that's the difference. A holding cell where you're interrogating somebody, he doesn't really have any shaykhs with the rest of the prison population. He's not really in a prison. Maybe that's why you're not making a gomel there either. Okay, so that is on imprisonment. What about recovery from an illness? So that was the 4th one, and that I think is more common than most of the. Intercity travel is pretty common today. Going on boats are pretty common.
Bridges.
Bridges. What about bridges?
Like going over the water. On a vessel going over the water. I don't know.
No, you're not on a vessel. You're not swimming in the water. You got to like an intercity travel. A bridge. For us, it would be considered intercity travel, yeah. Unless it's a very makom sakana. If it's a rickety bridge and you made it across, then you make a gomel. That's what Shulchan said. If it's a very serious, dangerous road, then even less than a parsa, you would make a bracha. Okay, recovery from an illness. What's the halacha over here? So we said someone who got sick and got healed makes HaGomel. How sick does he have to be? So the Rashba over here, Shalashu Rashba, he brings down. He says, he goes to his bed, he goes to bed, meaning he's confined to a bed, he's bedridden. And then he gets up from the bed, that will be enough to him to say, Birkat HaGomel. The Tur, he brings the Tur over here. And the Tur writes, only dafka b'makeh shechol sheyesh bo sakana. That really it's only if he's sick to the degree that he can die. Okay, that's how bad he has to be. So the Rashba seems to be saying he has to go to bed, gets up, he says HaGomel, and Tur says he has to be really sick, he has to be sakana. Let's take a look at the Shulchan Aruch, source 25, page 133. For every instance of being sick, person has to make a bracha. It's not a dangerous, debilitating, killing type of disease. Then when it goes to his bed and gets up, he goes to his bed and gets up. He's going to like an execution, right? He's going to be sentenced. Doesn't matter if someone has a chronic illness, someone doesn't have a chronic illness. So Shulchan Aruch seems to say that as long as he's sick, right, as if someone is being sentenced, therefore he makes a bracha when he gets up. He brings the Ramah, and the Ramah says like the Torah, right? He says, it's only if he has a fatal illness, and this is the minig of Ashkenaz. That's what he writes. Okay, so we have the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah Machloked. Shulchan Aruch seems to be going with the Rashba, and the Ramah seems to be going with the Torah. Okay, so here he wants to bring the Piskei Teshuvot. The Piskei Teshuvot wants to say that any type of surgery is also considered a sickness of sakana, meaning it's in a very dangerous situation. Truth is, people can go into surgery, it could be even minor surgeries, and they can't. Sometimes they don't come out, right? He says, Tzurba says even Ashkenazim at this point would say Gomel. Okay. Now, according. Mm-hmm. So tooth filling is not a surgery. Surgery usually means they're cutting you up. They're opening you up. You're putting you and giving you anesthesia. Right? They're giving you general anesthesia. They're knocking you out.
Knee replacement.
Whatever they knock you out for. Priceless. I don't know. I don't know. But appendix, they don't give you general anesthesia. Today appendix is laparoscopic surgery. You don't even know they're doing it. It's a small little laser in, out, and you're done. I don't. They give you general anesthesia. So if they give you general anesthesia, then it could be a makom sakana. Okay. In the olden days, the way they did appendix, right? My mother had her appendix removed in the former Soviet Union. Right? You can see this full scar on the side of her body. Like they cut the whole thing open to take it out and then stitch it back up. There was big marks. Like today, you don't even see it. They just go in with the laser and then pull it out.
No, they're doing 3 small ones.
3 small ones. Okay. The appendix, the scientists don't know what it does. Kodesh Baruch Hu does, but the scientists don't know what the appendix does. I don't know. I'm not a Kodesh Baruch. This Hashem doesn't make things stop for change, right? It's there for a reason.
What does it do right now?
It helps what?
Okay. Now. Okay, I will tell you. Now there's another factor that we have to take a look at. Illness. Person got up from his illness. He says Birkat HaGomel, and we say he has to go to bed. Right? So now we're going to see that there is a machloket how long he has to be in bed for. 72 minutes. You should say Birkat HaGomel every morning when you wake up. 72 minutes. Oh, some people don't even answer that. Okay, so the machloket, it has to be 3 days or not, or just enough for one day. Okay, so here he brings the Mamer Mordechai, and he writes over here, someone was sick, and he was inside his bed. Now he got better. Now he makes the bracha of HaGomel. So the opinion that you need 3 days. And he brings the Yalkut Yosef over here. He writes over here, listen to that's what he brings down. Vedat Maran Shulchan Aruch Nireh, says the Yalkut Yosef, it seems from the Shulchan Aruch, Shekol She'al Al Mita, anyone goes to his bed, and he gets up, Mevarach HaGomel. Ve'en tzarich sheyeh choleh gimel yamim. You don't need this 3 days. Okay?
And the amount you said?
1 day. Seems to be saying he's in his bed for a day. That's what he writes. That's what he says. That's the way he understands. Shulchan doesn't bring the word 3 days.
Oh. Didn't say 1
He
day.
goes to his bed. When he means bed, it doesn't. Okay. Okay. Let's understand what it means going to bed. It doesn't mean stamp your regular bed. If you go take a nap every day, or if you go to sleep at night, or you go sleep early, this, that, you're not going to make. It means I had to go to bed because I was so sick I couldn't function. And I was in bed.
Gonna help me. 1 hour. You mean?
I don't know about this 1 hour. But let's see what he brings down over here. No, he says not 3 days. Okay, so now we're going to turn to the Yalkut Yosef English edition, page 408. And there, we're going to see what he says about recovering from an illness.
No.
So he writes over here, someone is stricken with a mild illness that's not life-threatening. He still says Birkat HaGomel, he gets healed. Does not have to be a condition affecting any internal organs. Our sages thought that any illness that forces victim to become bedridden must be considered equal to a person who has been brought to the defendant's box in court as being tried for a crime, a current capital punishment. It makes no difference whether or not the illness is a chronic condition. If someone suffers from a moderate headache, stomachache, toothache, but the discomfort does not force him to rest in bed, right? A lot of us have a headache, stomach, toothaches. We still go to work, we function, we do what we have to do, right? So then, no, you're not going to make a Birkat HaGomel. Like if someone has a sore throat but is capable of going about his business, does not recite Birkat HaGomel. If the pain was accompanied by fever, however, he must recite the blessing. Okay, so if he has pain and fever, so he said Birkat HaGomel. And he brings down the footnote over here that someone's eye, he has an eye infection, right? But he doesn't have to stay in bed because his eye is his eye, but he can still walk around. He's not weak from it. Does he still say Birkat HaGomel? So it doesn't really mean bedridden. So you have the bedridden part, and you have a dangerous disease. The eye is dangerous. Okay, then in 45 he writes, Halacha 45. What does he say? For 1 day only, he must recite blessing of HaGomel. They needed to rest in bed, and he took a fever juice that made him feel ready to resume to a short time later. He must recite the blessing of HaGomel when he fully recovers. So like you guys were saying, he went to bed because he was so sick, took a Tylenol, got back up, he's making HaGomel. Right? He's making HaGomel. Doesn't have to be for 3 days. Doesn't refer. It doesn't have to be for 3 days. Well, I say halacha 46. Okay, someone got the flu because he was negligent. He wasn't wearing his mask. Didn't take the flu vaccine. Okay, and now he got the flu, right? And he recovered. He still says HaGomel, right? He still says HaGomel. Right there, halacha. It's not really any difference if he's bedridden.
No, not mean halacha. I mean medically.
Oh, it's a different infection. Strep is usually a bacteria, right, Zekel? Nathaniel, strep is an infection, bacteria, and flu is a viral. It's a virus. Afkamina, strep you can treat with antibiotics, right? And viruses you can't treat, although they'll try to treat it with some fake antivirals that haven't yet been proven to work so well. All right. So if they give you Tamiflu for flus, they say it works, but I don't know if it's really been proven. What? Makes it even worse, right? You can treat bacteria, you can fight bacteria, but you can't fight viruses. They usually have to run their course. They have to run their course. So a cold takes whatever time, flu takes whatever time, COVID takes whatever time to pass through. You have to get through that. You have to get through it. That's a difference in difference between. True. And why are we so concerned with strep? A lot of times people make a big deal about strep, brain or heart. Usually it affects the heart afterwards also. If you don't treat it right away, it can drop into the heart and it can become infectious in the heart, and that's a bigger problem. So that's why you have to treat it. That's why you should go visit a doctor if you're not feeling well. Okay. Yeah, you can go visit Rabbi Natano. He's going to give you whatever you need. He checks you up. He takes care of you. Okay. He writes over here. 47. If someone has a surgery to repair a hernia, he must recite the blessing of HaGomel, even though this procedure was performed with only local anesthesia. Same applies to someone who undergoes a catheterization to examine the arteries feeding his heart. Right? Someone's heart's not feeling well, so they do a cardiac cath to see how the vessels from the heart to the heart are. Likewise, someone had a heart attack and they helped him out. He's feeling better. In all these cases, he recites HaGomel. Someone breaks an arm or a leg and put it in a cast, he does not recite HaGomel. If someone faints and gets back up, he does not recite HaGomel. He gives them a eitz over here. Should say HaGomel. So travel intercity 72 minutes. So be chayiv to make HaGomel, and then you'll say. Here he says fainting. If someone faints, he's not required to say HaGomel upon being arrived. Nevertheless, it is best that he arrange to travel for at least 72 minutes, so he can recite the blessing after the trip and have in mind to thank him for restoring his health as well. Right. I don't know. I hear you, but I'm just yeah, it's okay. And 51. Okay. What about the guy is partially recovered? Okay, so he's on his road to recovery. Right. So you never want, by the way, if you know anybody's in a hospital, you don't want them to stay there longer than they have to. It's very dangerous to stay in the hospital. I mean, first of all, everyone who's working there. B, the walls and the place is just full with infections. It just is. That's a matter of fact. The super bugs, right? These bacteria that are very hard to fight off, they're usually acquired in a medical facility. Okay. There's one very rampant one before COVID. It was being written up in papers, and then COVID took over, and then everyone forgot about this one, but it's making its way again. Candida aureus, right? This thing, this disease, this infection is so contagious. It just anything that touches the person is considered automatically contagious already. They have the infrared; they can find the bacteria on that. Anything that comes out of his room has got to be bleached. So sometime after this patient leaves, they're supposed to do a terminal cleaning. And sometimes they don't do a good terminal cleaning. The next guy who comes in there, guess what? Ends up with continuous as well, within a number of days. And you never know the next patient next to the person. That family member's there, the patient next to you don't know what he's got behind the curtain, right? The CDC says for a lot of things, all you need is a curtain in between, and it's a good separation. Aureus, yeah, indeed A. There's C. diff. There's all sorts of things in the hospital. Listen, hospital workers, right? People who work in the hospital, because there's nurses and people are always in the patient's room. They're always getting sick every couple of days. Right? This is hurting, that's hurting, that, because you're just picking up stuff from what you're around. Right? And the mask doesn't help. We still get it, but we still wear the mask. Okay. Now, partially recovered. So someone from serious illness, but he responded well to medical treatments, and he was released from the hospital. Right? He says he may go to the synagogue and recite the blessing of HaGomel, even though he must continue his medications. The fact that the doctor determined that the road to recovery has been started and he's good enough to go home, he can make the bracha. He says that's the opinion. That's what people follow. Okay, so now you have it. For illness, you have to be in bed, not the entire day. You have to have been able to been forced to go to bed, or it's a serious illness enough that you should make HaGomel. It doesn't have to be 3 days, and for that you would make HaGomel. Fine. Now that we went through all those cases, now we're going to deal, Isaac, you asked, the process of making Birkat HaGomel. Okay, the process, meaning how many people do you need there, right? So, brings the Gemara Masechtas Brachos on page 136, source 29. So it's all based on the pasuk in Tehillim, right? So this is all based on Tehillim 107, and over there it says, what did we saw before? So it says, right? So it says, "Veikalalu." What does it say everything? We saw it earlier. Right away, it says. So it says, "V'romemu b'kal am." Right? That's what it says first. V'romemu b'kal am, and Moshav zekinim yahalelu. So how do you understand this pasuk? So zekinim is usually zeshakana chachma, right? So therefore, you need kahal am. You need 10. V'romemu b'kal am, and then you need zekinim. So Amar Zutra Amar v'tirim minehu rabanan. So you need to have 2 rabbis there, 2 chachamim. Those are shana halacha. Those who learn halacha. Shenemar uv moshav zekirim yahalalu. Maslu Ravashi ve'ema kulhu rabbanan. Why don't you say they all have to be tamid chachamim? You need 10 tamid chachamim there. So he says, "Mi ketiv." Does it say in the pasuk b'kahal zekinim? Does it say in the community of zekinim? No, b'kahal. It says b'kahal. Ve'ema bi'asara shar. Maybe just regular 10 people. V'trei rabbanan. And 2 rabbis, I mean, you need 10 plus 2. Maybe you need 12. Well, it ends up kasha. It's the kasha, it's a difficulty, but that's not the halach. Okay, you don't need 10 plus 2. Okay, he brings the Tur. The Tur writes that a person must give thanks in the presence of 10. So writes the Rambam. But the Tosfos writes that since the question is unresolved, we act strictly and we require both 10 and 2 additional scholars. That's what Tosfos wants to say. Now, what happens if he said a bracha HaGomel without 10 people? Right? Without 10 people present, the Torah says you don't have to do it again. Because where it says, "V'yomu b'kal am," is lav dafka. And that's only lechatchila, that you need 10, but if you have less than 10, it would be okay. Now, in the Yalkut Yosef English edition, on page 304, is it 304? No, it must not be 304. How did I write 304? It can't be 304. 384. Can't even read my own handwriting. Page 384, he brings the Rabbeinu Yonah. He brings in footnote number 4 over there, he brings Rabbeinu Yonah, who writes, Rabbeinu Yonah writes, that if someone reciting the blessing where there are less than 10, he has not fulfilled his obligation at all. So not like the Abar Turim, not like the Torah that said you can fulfill the obligation even less than 10. The Rabbeinu Yonah says you need to have 10. I just wanted to point that out. Okay? Now, Shulchan Aruch, source 31. Tzarich levarech bracha zo mipnei asara. V'trei minahu rabanan. and you need 2 of them, 2 out of the 10 to be Rabbanan. Dichtiv v'romemu b'kal am u'mashav zekinim yadalu ve'em lo shchichi Rabbanan. But if you don't find rabbis, you should not stop from making the bracha. The minhag is to make it at Kriyat Torah, because at Kriyat Torah you'll have 10, but it doesn't have to be at Kriyat Torah. As long as you have 10 people, you can make the bracha. But the minhag is to do it at Kriyat Torah. The minhag is, by the way I've seen it, is that if you get an aliyah, then you make it after your aliyah, right? And if you don't get an aliyah, you make a gomel, you come after the last oiler, right? So on the weekday, that would be after Shlishi, you would go and you would make the Birkat HaGomel. On Shabbat, usually after Mashlim, right? So after Kaddish, the guy himself, he has to make a gomel, and anyone else has to make a gomel, makes a gomel afterwards. If you're reading a maf there, right, you're reading off Torah, you should not stop between the Torah and the Haftorah to make HaGomel. You'll make the HaGomel after Birkat Haftorah at the end, then you make Birkat HaGomel. That's the way the minhag is. That's the way it should be done. Okay. Now says the Shulchan Aruch, if you're blessing with less than 10, yesh arim sheyatza, yesh arim shelo yatza, right? Rabbeinu Yonah and the Tur. So in deference to the Rabbeinu Yonah, you should say it again, this time without Shem Malchut, right? So we won't say the bracha, we won't say Shem Hashem again, but you should do it again in front of 10. Okay? Fine. Mishnah Berurah. This 10, does the guy making the bracha include it in the 10? He says yes. Im Bal Hanes, even with the person who the miracle happened to, whoever's making the gomel, right? Mishnah Berurah says, who is the zaken? Who is this person that's considered a chacham? Because of Magen Avraham, someone who's learned halakha. It has to be someone who learned halakha. That's the person who's considered a chacham for this.
This will go or no?
Talmudist, no, it has to be a halachalist. A kabbalist, right? That's already above everything. It's above nature. I don't even know. This is because the primary requirement for 10 is only a mitzvah. So you have to make it with at least 10. All right. Fine. Or let's see own rights over here. He brings down Nira Sha'adev Levarach Bet Midrash. Right, so Rabbi Abishul says the best place to make a gomel is in the Bet Midrash. Right? Ain't some Sefer Torah, even there's no Sefer Torah there, but you have Talmidei Chachamim there, and it's better because you don't know the Bet Knesset you have Talmidei Chachamim who learn halacha or not. You just have everybody davening. Nobody's Talmid Chacham enough. Therefore, you should try to do in the Bet Midrash. But he writes that you don't make bittul Torah in the Bet Midrash. Right? You can't walk in and say, "I'm going to say HaGomel." Everybody stop learning so I can say HaGomel. No, you can't do that. Okay, just to look at the Yalkut Yosef for a quick minute, just to see what he says on the process over here. Okay, the blessing of HaGomel, page 383, halacha number 2. The blessing of HaGomel is recited in presence of 10 men, 2 whom are Torah scholars, right? That's what we already mentioned. Halacha 2, and he writes in footnote 2, again, he says a definition, and the Magen Avraham had this definition, Torah scholar in this context, someone who's able to teach practical halacha. It was a little different than the lashon of the Mishnah Berurah. He says someone who learns halacha. Here he says teach halacha. He's bringing this here b'shem the Magen Avraham. Okay, I didn't check the Magen Avraham inside, but that's what he's bringing. Teaching practical halacha. Yeah. Okay. Why not? Why not? Halacha 3. No one. If there are no Torah scholars present. I had once, you're saying Zaken, once I was benching, and there was a name of Ketamazon, there was an older rabbi sitting next to me. And I said, Nara iti v'gam zekanti, l'lo iti tzadik nezah. And he looks at me and says, Gam zekanti? Right? It's because I was a young guy, so 25, 26 at the time. I said, yeah, Zaken, Zeshakana Chachma. End of story. But fine. However, he must not recite it. Okay, if we're talking about the 10 people, fine. Halacha number 4. Okay, this is the minhag. It's to say Birkat HaGomel standing, right? Like bringing a carbon, so you're standing. Halacha 8. Right, talked about this, talked about this, talked about this, then we talked about that. Okay. Now, I'm going to skip this section in the Tzurba. He's dealing with saying HaGomel during COVID. If you can say HaGomel on Zoom, right? The difference is, do you need the 10 people as a minion, or is it to what's it called? It's a not a Darvish of Kedusha that needs a minion, but rather it's something that you're spreading the nace. And maybe Zoom is enough when the time you can't gather together to spread the nace and say HaGomel via Zoom. And that's what Rav Hershel Schachter from Shiva Shebein Tzikol Chanan, Rav Asher Weiss, they want to say if you can't gather a minion, that perhaps you can say HaGomel on Zoom. Okay, I didn't want to get into that. We'll leave that at that. No, it's definitely not considered a minion. The question now is, does a Gomel really need a minion? Is Gomel need 10 people to say that there's a nace that happened, and I'm thinking that? Well, yeah, we say you need the minion. Sfaradim for sure say we need a minion. Okay? Because at least the way I understand, Chavaji says that a woman says it, and she's the Ezra's Nashim, and the Ezra's Nashim is a wall, and it's separating between room and room, then you have to tell her to come inside, because he has to have 10 people there. So it seems from his lashon that it has to be actually there. But Rav Schachter wants to say, based on his ideas, that you don't really need 10 people. Maisa there, you just need people to know of it. Okay, Maisa, we need to have 10 people there. That's sakalachim for us. You have to have 10 people there. Okay, how soon must someone recite Birkat HaGomel? And really, how long do you have to say Birkat HaGomel? All right, I got saved. I didn't have a chance to Birkat HaGomel, and every time I come to the shul, I forget. How long do I have to say it? So how soon and how long? Yeah, I didn't say HaGomel yet. Can I say HaGomel? Okay, so what do we do? So says the Torah, anytime he wants to make it up, he can say it. Whatever. You can say it. So the Torah says. So Bet Yosef brings down the Torah's position, and then he brings the Ramban. The people already said the bracha for up to 3 days, right? Because there's a Gemara in Eruvin that says a person comes back from travels for 3 days, he's patur from davening, right? Because his mind's still unsettled. So those 3 days are the 3 days that it's still there. His travel, so he makes a bracha up until then. Then he brings down from the Rashba and Rabbeinu Yonah that apparently some say you have 5 days. So you have the Torah that said you can make it up forever. You have the Ramban that seems to be saying you got 3 days, and the Rashba and Rabbeinu Yonah says you have 5 days. What does Shulchan Aruch say? Shulchan Aruch says like the Torah: if a guy delayed, anytime that he wants to, but nachon, and it's proper. You shouldn't wait 3 days. All right, you shouldn't postpone it past 3 days. But technically, if you didn't do it, you have the whole time to do it. The Mishnah Berurah wants to say over here that if 3 days will be up and there's no Sefer Torah, meaning you came back Monday after the Kriyat Torah was done, right? And now if you're going to wait 3 days, it's going to be Thursday. You're going to wait 3 days. If you're going to wait till the next Torah reading, it's going to be 4 days, right? So therefore, make it on Wednesday without the Torah. All you need is 10 people. You don't need the Torah. Mishnah Berurah wants to say that. The Aruch HaShulchan writes that if a person extends it for a very long time, that he's forgotten about it. All right, the guy's totally forgotten about it. All right, and now someone reminded, remember when we were in Lakewood, we did this? It's been 6 years, but I forgot to say HaGomel. You say HaGomel now. He said you should no longer recite it. He has lost the bracha. So we'll take a look at him now in the Yalkut Yosef and how he formulates the process over here. So 393, halacha 21.
For the most recent trip, you didn't say for 1 year.
So
if again, no.
No, so if you can have kavanah, then I'm saying this HaGomel should cover everything for this trip and for everything that I may have missed. That's fine. He writes over here. This is his lashon over here in the Yalkut Yosef, English edition, page 393. Everyone should try his best to recite the blessing HaGomel within the first 3 days of becoming obligated. Even if you cannot be present at a Torah reading within the first 3 days, he must not postpone the blessing until the next time a Torah is present, by present Torah reading. In fact, even if there are no Torah scholars present at this time, he should not postpone the blessing until he has the opportunity to be in their company. As long as there are 10 men present, he should recite the blessing during the first 3 days. If someone did postpone it, he may still recite it whenever he chooses. Okay, that's the lashon. Okay, so take a look at the note 16 over there on the second page of 394. He deals with reciting the blessing of HaGomel after an extended period. And he wants to say the last 3 lines on the left column. Right? Logic dictates, however, that after a year has passed, one may not recite the blessing based on the principle of safek brachot la'akel. Apparently, a year is too long. He says if a person has a new gomel, he should have the old gomel in mind, or he can get someone else to say gomel and answer a main for him. Allah Baruch concurred with the ruling of the Betzel HaChochmah that even if several years have passed, one may still recite Birkat HaGomel. Nevertheless, it's best to find another way to fulfill one's obligation, as explained here. So there is an opinion, like the Aruch HaShulchan, that's forgotten. There's an opinion is a year, and then the truth is you can really say it forever, but better to find another way out of it than saying it. So I think most people do that. If they forgot it, it's a very long time. They either have a new reason to say HaGomel and they have that in mind, or they'll get someone else to say HaGomel. Rabbi Tzion is very good saying, okay, he's saying HaGomel. Anybody needs to have come on for HaGomel, you can answer a main to this bracha, and he moves on. Okay, fine. Now, what about Birkat HaGomel for women and for minors? Women and for minors. Tanim and Nashim. So the Mishnah Berurah wants to say, the Katan enu mechuyevet lehodot. He doesn't have to make Birkat HaGomel. If you say in the bracha, what do you say? What's the lashon of the bracha? No, Rabbi, Hayavim tovot. Right? So he says over here, HaGomel Hayavim, who redeemed those who were Hayav. Right? He says a Katan's never Chayav. Katan's a Katan. He's not responsible for his sins. Right? So maybe he doesn't have to say it. And then he says, "V'gam nashim," says the Mishnah Berurah, "min hagoyim she'emi barach bracha." Women don't make this bracha. We do it. Apparently, the Mishnah Berurah, those who follow Mishnah Berurah, don't make the bracha. Perhaps because it's a lack of tznius. Again, the Yalkut Yosef Chamuvadia always said there was no lack of tznius if a woman would even chant the Torah in a shul. We don't do it. It's not covered for the tzibor. But the Gemara says anyone could go up, even a woman. And Chamuvadia says it means she can actually read it, because in the olden days you didn't have a Baal Korah. You had the person who got up and read it, so she read it. And of course, the woman back then knew the Ta'amim to the Torah, right? So she would have read it with all the Ta'amim. There's no call, there's no erva there. The call is not an erva when it comes to reading the Torah. So we wouldn't have to have, we wouldn't have that problem. And Mishnah Berurah says perhaps it's like a clear, it's coming in the front. Here in the source 140, and on page 144, source 43, what about a woman who recently gave birth? So he brings down that there is a custom, she does recite it. Someone then wanted to say maybe she can say it in front of 10 women. So that's pretty much knocked out of the park right away, because it says Kal Am, right? And men make a Kehila, not women. So you can have 100 women, doesn't make a difference. You won't be able to do it there. So the Piskei Teshuvot wants to he brings down a couple of minhagim of Ashkenazim. And the practice is that a minyan is brought to the home of the woman who was recently given birth, and they listen as she recites HaGomel. This is only after a woman has given birth, but not after recovering from other illnesses. So apparently by a woman, if she's sick and she gets better, no HaGomel. Only for giving birth. In other Ashkenazi communities, the custom is that a woman does not recite Birkat HaGomel at all. So you have different opinions by Ashkenazim. Okay? What about us Sephardim? All right, so let's take a look for us Sephardim. What do we do? So first thing first, he writes over here. So page 387, the Yalkut Yosef English edition, halacha number 12. He writes over here, Nashim chayavos levarach Birkat HaGomel. Men and women equally obligated to recite Birkat HaGomel and to recite in the presence of 10 men. So that's his first statement, that they have an equal like men. Now, if she gives birth, giving birth is like being sick. and then getting better. And apparently she gets better after 7 days. Then she makes a bracha. She can say it at home if they have a minyan. Usually the minhag is during the Brit Yitzchak. Usually they have a minyan during the Brit Yitzchak. So they make it there. If they didn't have a minyan Birkat Yitzchak, she can make it in the morning by the Brit or anytime there's a minyan. So for example, if she gives birth to a girl, you're not going to have a Brit Yitzchak at home. So you can have 10, if you get 10 men at home, fine, you can make a bracha at home. Otherwise, she can come to the shul, whether it's on Shabbat or on the weekday, if 10 people, and she can make the bracha. Okay, so for us, women do make a bracha. What about children? Right? Mr. Brewer said children don't. So if you take a look on page 390, he writes over here that if a child under bar mitzvah became ill and recovered, he says Birkat HaGomel after being called up to the Torah. And this is certainly the rule for a child over bar mitzvah. The father cannot say HaGomel for the child. All right, the child has to say his own HaGomel. So we don't pass him like that, Mishnah Berurah. Children can say, women can say HaGomel. Fine. Good. Let's see further here. Okay, so in that case, what you can do is, what we're going to see next, one person can be Yotzeh others. Technically, she could say HaGomel, technically, but in such a case, she's usually not traveling alone to Muncie, and there are other people who are traveling, and she's in that shul and saying HaGomel, she should have kavanah to be Yotzeh through that bracha. That would be it. But if she wanted to make her own Gomel, technically she's in her right to make the Gomel. According to the Al-Ghazal. Intercity travel. It has to be intercity 72 minutes of intercity travel in order to be chayav in Gomel for Sfaradim. It's like, what? Doesn't take 72 minutes? Doesn't take 72 minutes for you to get to Muncie? Next time you're taking me. Taking me. I can't even get to Muncie in 72 minutes. I can't, never. Every time I go, it's at least almost 2 hours. You're lucky, hour and 40. Yeah, it's long. It's a long drive. Okay. Fulfilling Birkat HaGomel by reciting Amen to the bracha of another. Okay, so Shulchan Aruch says, but another person recites the bracha, blessed are you, Hashem, right? It says bracha HaGomel, and he answers Amen. He has fulfilled his obligation. Okay, so we know this. Oh, fine. Now, he says you have to answer Amen. What about Shemaya Ta'ona? If I hear it, it's already enough. Why have to answer Amen to it? So that's where Kiva Eger gets into that. He says it's Tzarchin, why you have to answer Amen. Perhaps you're saying Hashem did for me, or he's making the bracha and he's having himself only in mind, so you have to say Amen in order to get yourself involved. Perhaps that's what he says, but let's take a look in the Alka Joseph Halacha 18 and 20 over here, 18 through 20, where he deals with the practicals over here for us. If someone recited bracha HaGomel on behalf of himself and on behalf of someone else, and a second person listened to the blessing intending to fulfill his obligation, he has indeed fulfilled his obligation. This is even more true if he responded Amen. So it seems to the Alka Joseph, he's saying that he doesn't necessarily have to answer Amen. Shemay works here. He just heard the bracha. He's already Yotzei. He doesn't have to answer. Maybe he says Amen, even better. What happens? Like, if someone has to say Birkat HaGomel, he doesn't know how to say it. And I already said Birkat HaGomel, or I don't have a chiv to say Birkat HaGomel. Can I say Birkat HaGomel for him? If someone has already recited the blessing of HaGomel for himself, he may not recite it a second time for someone else, even if he doesn't know how to recite it. The Talmudic rule permitting a person to recite a blessing for someone else, he was already fulfilled the obligation, applies only to the category of blessings for the mitzvot only. Does not apply to blessings that are simply praise and thanksgiving. In this category of blessing, each individual must recite the blessing for himself and not appoint an agent to recite it for him. So he cannot make a gomel for every, one guy say a gomel for 10 people. Can't do. What about, there's 10 people in the shul, they have 10 different reasons for saying HaGomel. This guy had the flu. This guy had COVID. He had an eye ailment. This guy went through surgery. This guy went on a yacht. This guy went on a cruise liner. This guy went on a plane for 72 minutes. This guy traveled 72 minutes intercity travel. Can one guy say HaGomel for everybody? They all have different reasons to say Gomel. No, what are you saying? Even if there are many people who are obligated to recite the blessing, some will recover from illness, some have been released from prison, some will arrive from a trip. One person may recite the blessing on behalf of them all. Okay, so as long as they have a chiyuv, one can say it, and it can be yotze to everybody, even though the chiyuvim are for different reasons. It can still be yotze because the chiyuv is the same chiyuv of saying Gomel, so one can say it for everyone. So what we do is fine. One person can say Gomel, and everyone can be yotze, as long as the person who is saying it is hayat to say it, right? And he can say it for everyone. Okay, we're out of time. Oh, we're out of time. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we finished this year. Good.
Amen.
Hey. Amen. Yes, you may have
Amen.
Amen.
Wow.
Amen. Zak Baruch. תודה רבה לכולם. שבוע טוב.
Thank you.
Thank you.